annihilate the Jewish people from Bali to London to Madrid to Mumbai and most recently Bali, only because they are different. They torture and slay innocent people because we don't follow their ways. Chanukah was established as a festival to celebrate miraculous triumph over purity, over evil, and love over hate. The festival is celebrated by lighting the menorah in public domains to publicize this message to all mankind. Good will triumph over evil, love and tolerance will triumph over hate, and purity will triumph over the mundane. The Lubavitcher Rebbe stressed the message of Chanukah. A little bit of light dispels much darkness. When faced with a world of prejudice, racism, and hate, we think, what can a person do? What can we do? A little bit of light, some good, some kindness, can dispel and break the darkness that seems so thick. Chabad of Melbourne takes the message of Chanukah and practices it out through the year. We reach out to Melbourne's Jewry and Melbourne's inner city community. Chabad of Melbourne is a home away from home, where people come from all walks of life. They learn of the Jewish heritage and have numerous social educational opportunities. Over the past 12 years, in Melbourne CBD, thousands of Jews from all walks of life, from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, have experienced the light and outreach of Chabad of Melbourne. Chabad of Melbourne acts as the first port of call for all those who wish to access Judaism in Melbourne, with our public events from the Chanukah, Sukkot in Melbourne City Square, the Purim in Melbourne Town Hall, our regular luncheons, weekly office visits, crisis counselling, hospital visits, just to name a few. Thousands of people have experienced the light that helps dispel the darkness. Our aim is simple. We provide a Jewish positive experience for all those who seek it. We help cultivate a spirit of tolerance in our multicultural community. We appreciate the support of the Victorian government, the City of Melbourne, and our fellow Jewish organisations who help us in our important role of serving Melbourne. May the Chanukah lights, with the message of purity and their holiness, shine as a beacon to all mankind, promoting harmony and peace in our great city. It is with great pleasure that I invite the Deputy Premier, Rob Hulls, to address us. Happy Chanukah to all.
Can I welcome everybody here this evening. I start by paying my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, to Ted Bainu, the Leader of the Opposition, to Tony Lupton, my colleague, the Member for Paran, to Jennifer Hubbard, my parliamentary colleague, to Helen Shardy, the Member for Caulfield, of course to John Sow, the former Lord Mayor of Melbourne, to Rabbi Herzog, to Rabbi Klugart, to, of course, Rabbi Gutnick, distinguished guests, community leaders, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. It certainly is my absolute privilege to welcome everybody here to Parliament House this evening, just as it's a privilege to share Chanukah with you. As we've heard, this is a festival that carries great meaning for the Jewish people, but it's one that can speak to us all of many, many things. That's because it's about, as we've heard, triumph of light over darkness and the triumph of the Jewish people with their culture and identity intact through some very dark times. As we light the menorah here in Queen's Hall this evening, then, we remember and celebrate the particular contribution of our own Jewish communities here in Victoria. We celebrate the light you bring, the role you play in making Victoria such a multicultural and multi-faith community, a community whose strength lies, as we all know, in its diversity. Of course, the history of the Jewish community in Victoria stretches a long way back.
Look what you're doing.
10 years before we had even become an independent
What
colony,
you're doing.
a minion was formed in the place we now call Melbourne, and we had our first Jewish congregation. A few years later, we had a synagogue. As I'm sure many of you know, it was just down the road on Burke Street, near where the Law Institute is today. A member of that synagogue, later its president, walked these very halls in the 19th century. Nathaniel Levi, who sat in both Houses of Parliament, I'm sure would be very pleased to see the menorah lit in Queen's Hall tonight. The Jewish community is in fact the oldest non-Anglo-Celtic group in Australia, with of course the important exception of our Indigenous people. And it's, I think, very interesting to reflect on some important connections between these two very important communities. Last year at Chanukah, the Premier spoke of William Cooper, a Yorta Yorta elder who stood in solidarity with the Jewish people of Europe at the dark approach of World War II. In 1938, he marched with a delegation of Indigenous men and women to the German consulate in South Melbourne. His people knew what it was to suffer, and while so many around the world stayed silent, this one elderly man could not. All these years later, the Jewish Community Council of Victoria is talking with the Koori Heritage Trust about creating a major artwork in William Cooper's memory. The connection does not, of course, end with William Cooper. Many Jewish Victorians have recognised the strong resonance between Jewish and Indigenous experience. We might think of the late Ron Caston, a giant in both the Jewish community and the legal fraternity, who once said, and I quote, "My determination not to stand by and see the Jewish people downtrodden and persecuted was meaningless if I was standing by and seeing another people downtrodden and persecuted within my own country." Of course, as we know, Ron went on to play a leading role in many groundbreaking Aboriginal land rights cases like Mabo. Another great Victorian supporter of Indigenous Australians, and again a highly prominent person in the Jewish community, is of course Mark Liebler, co-chair of Reconciliation Australia. Meanwhile, the Holocaust Museum in Elsternwick is working with survivors of the stolen generations, sharing experiences and lessons learned. Just another of many examples of service and solidarity between Jewish and Indigenous people of this state. These examples, I believe, are a cause for celebration and also a cause for optimism. They are a mirror to the richness that a diverse and compassionate society brings all of us, a reminder of the triumph of light over darkness, which, as we all know, Chanukah represents. As we light the menorah this year, then, it is a chance, I think, for all of us to remember the ways that light has already been and is still being spread in our community. Happy Chanukah to everyone here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hulse. We are fortunate in the state of Victoria, to have leaders of such tremendous calibre. It was not very long ago that I visited the office of the Deputy Premier, the Honourable Rob Hulse, together with a select group of senior rabbis, and the discussion that ensued was both refreshing and inspiring. A man with vision, with understanding and passion and commitment to all that is important. A man who's not afraid to ask a rabbi a question, without notice, I might say. And thank you again, Mr. Hulse, for taking time out and for joining us in our celebrations tonight. Now, if there is one man to whom I always, without fail,